Anyway, let's talk to Tom in Vancouver.
Hey.
Tom, I think we've talked before. Have we talked before?
Not with you or Forrest or you. No.
Okay.
First time.
So, Tom, you're calling in to say that you believe that miracles prove the existence of God. And I just want to know if you belong to a specific organization. And so if we're talking about like the things that the Vatican is called miracles, or are we talking about you have personal anecdotes of miracles? What miracles are we talking about?
Well, I'm Roman Catholic, so it would be under the Roman Catholic understanding of miracles.
Okay, so certainly, let's just start here. You understand that nobody here actually accepts those miracles.
Correct.
Okay. And so, and then even when you go back and you examine some, we had a person who called in who wanted to talk about the big, what was that event where the moon and the sun were doing crazy stuff, and how actually, if you go back and you look, the story had basically turned into people had spiritually witnessed, but anybody who was there to document it, it literally wasn't a physical miracle because there were lots of the people there to take pictures. Lots of people who were there who said they didn't see it, but other people claim to see it. So it's that kind of thing. And so we're talking about anecdotes. So I suppose are you calling to say that if you accept that those miracles happened, they would be evidence of God, or are you here to defend that those miracles happened? Because that'd be two very different conversations.
I think it's first one.
Okay. Well, we don't accept that those miracles happen. So I think the problem is we don't have anywhere to go unless you have a good reason that we should believe those miracles happened.
Yeah, I'm currently looking up like the most interesting and silly miracles that are like written down that people like. The first one I found was Saint Guthlac's belt, where Saint Guthlac came about a madman and wrapped his belt around him and squeezed it until a demon flew out of his mouth, and the man never took off the belt and the madness never returned. Did that shit happen? Or is that just a thing? Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm looking up right now.
Yeah, I mean, just in line with what you just said, there's a Catholic priest online, Father Vincent Lamfair, and he's a Catholic priest for the Archdiocese of Indiana, I think.
Hey, can we get away from the TV or the background noise that's going on over there?
Sorry?
You got like a TV or something behind you playing something, or you got people in the background or something.
I'm in a Tim Hortons of all things, and I had a double, typical Canadian.
Oh, I see. We can't get somewhere quieter?
Are you having difficulty hearing me?
You're faint, and I'm autistic, so that's kind of the answer. I've real bad audio sensory things, and I'm just trying to improve the quality of the show here. So it's kind of like you're 20% louder than the background noise, but it's certainly distracting.
All right, so I will control outside.
That'd be great.
I don't know if that's going to make it worse or not. How's that?
Well, right now when you're not talking, I don't hear anything, so we'll find out.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah, I think we're good. All right, so go ahead and continue with your. I think Forrest was asking for if you believed in a specific miracle. You were sharing about some YouTube priest. And I'll just let you know while you're telling the story what direction I'm hoping you're going is a well-documented thing whose explanation could only be a miracle, and that it would not be acceptable to even just say that's weird, but I don't know what happened there, but it's weird.
In the meantime, I'm going to continue asking about obscure miracles that I'm finding online that the Catholic Church has claimed are real things, like this one where the Virgin Mary squirted breast milk on a man and cured him of diseases.
Yeah. Look, if miracles exist, that's not, it's I'd want my miracle delivered via titty too. All right, so Tom. Sorry, I don't mean to make fun of your religion, but I kind of do a little. All right, good. I'm glad you're a good sport about it. Go ahead and share with us your sort of defense of these miracles.
Well, it's not a defense so much as it's an observation of a Catholic priest claiming that he exorcises demons,
right?
And that there are other eyewitnesses that are there during the exorcism,
right?
And I guess the link would be that Jesus performed exorcisms in the 1st century, and that this particular priest is continuing the same work in the 21st century. And so that's where the link is.
Right, but so let's talk about the demon exorcisms. Are we seeing a physical monster emerge? We're documenting that, or are we seeing basically, I guess I'm asking a performance, not necessarily one that they've agreed to, but is there something that is more miraculous about this than, for example, a stage hypnotist who gets people to do and say crazy things and go into different trance-like states? And, is there something about this that goes, that we can eliminate that this is and keep in mind, we now know that many of the things in the past people called demons were schizophrenia, were other mental disorders. And in fact, while there were these short-term examples of miracles where people would say, they exorcised the demon and stuff, it also turns out that if you follow the story of a lot of those people, it usually turned into like being sent somewhere, like an asylum or something, being abused by people, whatever. But, when you momentarily see them suddenly take on a personality change, it seems like something's happened. So or what are we talking about? Are we talking about you see the demon run out? Or are we talking about things that could be explained by impressionable people doing performances?
I guess in regards to the first, not the first one, according to Father Vincent, they go through a process of determining whether the person has any psychological problems. And then
does that process include the examination by a licensed therapist?
Yes.
Right. Well, not a licensed therapist. It would need to be a psychiatrist. But also, Tom. Tom, are licensed psychiatrists capable of catching all mental conditions?
Is it an exact science? Is that what you're asking me?
It's not even necessarily a great science. Like, I'm autistic, okay? And yet I have crossover with ADHD. When I was younger, I'm not going to share the list, before they figured out that there was basically the diagnosis is autistic and CPTSD from my cult upbringing, basically. And I've worked through both of those. But there are things that come along with that, like general anxiety disorder. However, in the past, the person who really fucked me up was seeing a mental professional who was also a chaplain, who had a lot of theories, a lot of crazy theories about what was going on in my brain. And then other people along the way who, because we didn't have a very good understanding of CPTSD, because I am able to somewhat charismatically mask, and masking concepts weren't even well known. Like, we're just now developing. There are things right now that psychiatrists are interacting with that haven't yet made it to the DSM. They'll be in the next edition, but we're anticipating. So it's not just that it isn't an exact science. And the question then also becomes, are we talking about a secular psychiatrist with no skin in the game? I don't even need them to be personally secular, but sort of secular as far as separated. Because I doubt that. Usually, like when I needed therapy because my parents found out I was self-harming, they didn't take me to a therapist who could treat me the best. They treated me with the therapist who literally practiced out of the church building. So there's lots of questions we have for observation. And even if you found all of that shit out, we would still sit there and go, you didn't see the demon fucking fly out. We have nothing new, nothing novel we can measure. And neurotypical people are capable of psychotic breaks. Whether that was what happened in that case, we don't know. Whether it's schizophrenia that went undiagnosed, whether it's a condition that's not well understood. You look at things like what's now called dissociative identity disorder, might not make it into future DSMs because the understanding of that is sort of getting diffused into other conditions, and sort of the understanding of like what used to be called multiple personalities disorder, that is no longer really accepted to exist. Then there's this newer thing called dissociative identity disorder. That's being challenged on its existence and now being absorbed into these other things. Again, conditions that are just now being understood. So when I ask for something that we can agree has to be a miracle, I'm saying you need novelty to some degree, because right now, the example it sounds like you're giving, I can still say, here is a natural explanation that could have happened. And while I don't know if that did happen, it's never been demonstrated that miracles actually for sure do happen. Therefore, my candidate explanation of undiagnosed something, performance art, or literally just they're all liars, because we know liars exist, and they're in it together to make money, whether or not you believe that about that pastor, whether or not that's even true, as a candidate, it is infinitely more likely than an actual demon was exorcised, because we have demonstration of one and no demonstrations of the other.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess if you were to go look at this video, the details, I guess, were that that the person that was possessed spoke in such a manner that it wasn't coming from the individual, and that when the exorcism was done, that individual disappeared, and it was just the same individual. It's when you're talking about likely explanations, I guess the question I would have is, how do you account for him doing that, changing the nature of the person?
Right. How, again, undiagnosed schizophrenia is a candidate explanation. A good performer, because I'll tell you right now, Donald Trump is not talking to you, and yet it sort of sounds like he is a little bit. This isn't my best impression, but I can switch, and I can be somebody else entirely at a moment's notice.
And I know you're not Donald Trump, but that's okay.
Do you know that? Who knows? Nobody. Have you ever seen me and Donald Trump in the same room at the same time, Tom? Anyway,
no, I've heard your voices.
I'm kidding. Well, voices. Who knows? Who knows? Tom, the whole thing I'm telling you is, I, as a candidate explanation, am still stuck with, it is more likely that the person can do a good act, be a good liar, be a good performer, or have an undiagnosed condition which has some level of personality swapping. Sir, again, we've seen on this very channel that my personality changes dependent on how many Skittles I've had in a day. So that part doesn't impress me. When we're talking about miracles, the ones that people never really want to defend are the ones like they saw the moon fall out of the sky, because there's no documentation. In fact, the documentation of that day, there's actually the opposite. Or the apparition to 3 children. Well, what's more likely, that 3 impressionable children were either lied or coached to lie, or that these actual physics-changing, universe-tearing events are happening. And so at the end of the day, you called in, and basically your idea is, if you accept that these miracles are true, you would then take that to the conclusion of, therefore God did it, which there technically are some arguments against. Christopher Hitchens would argue against that idea for the Bible, that even if you proved the entire Bible true, technically Jesus could still be a liar. You haven't actually proven that he's the Son of God or is God or anything. Give you all the miracles, all the book, you don't prove Jesus's divinity or any of it. You would have to still then do more. But that argument aside, your argument is if you accept that these miracles happened as they're reported to have happened, right, then you would probably believe in God. And I sort of agree with that. I just don't agree that the miracles that I have a good reason to believe the miracles. So what good reason do you have to believe the miracles?
Which miracle are we talking about?
Any. What good reason? Well, you pick a miracle and tell me why you believe it. Was a miracle.
But I'll do this quickly. You've mentioned a number of times. Fatima is an example of prophecy, where the 3 Portuguese children predicted events which they wouldn't have been able to foresee or understand. Like, for example, the Second World War, the coming of the Second World War, or the rise of communism in Europe.
Yeah, but you've asserted that they wouldn't be able to, quote unquote, foresee. But you don't know what the conversations that they're absorbing are. Now, depending on the time and stuff, it would be very impressive. However, almost every time, and I think it is this because I've looked into the Fatima miracles, but it's been a time, though I pull them up every now and then when they're brought up. It's not World War II will start on this date in 1930, whatever, and it'll be about this, and this is going to happen. It's a great war which comes to plague the entire world. It's always these things that have happened lots of times in the past and are getting larger and larger in scale. Things that you are hearing scriptures about, and these were not non-religious kids. The word war wasn't an invention of their miracle. And again, one of the miracles they predicted, and the big one that they predicted, people were there with cameras to document, and it did not happen despite lots of people saying that it did. And so now the current apologetic was that it was a spiritual event that only the right spiritual people saw, even though you literally had like members of the same family with the same level of belief, with some saying they saw it and some not. So there was also an arbitrary selection process of who was going to see it or not. My hypothesis is who is the more impressionable person who feels the need to fit in with the religious people. Those are probably the people who saw it. And the people who didn't were the ones who were like, no, I'm only going to tell you if I actually saw it or not. I can't prove that, but that's my hypothesis. So Tom,
Right.
why do you accept, you're talking about stories, and in a lot of cases you're talking about stories of stories. Some of them with opportunities to document that failed to be documented. Why do you sit there and go, with Catholicism, I accept all of these miracles, but with Mormonism, which arguably has more, and some of them happened like yesterday, with Mormonism, I'm going to dismiss those. I'm not going to become a Mormon. I don't believe that Muhammad, broke the moon in twain and rode off on a winged horse and was God's special exception for fucking 9-year-olds. I don't believe that. I don't believe those miracles. I'm going to keep bringing that up today because I really find that religion disgusting. Not that Christianity isn't also disgusting. I've just been tired of the same stupid Islamic callers recently. But anyway,
Right.
I digress. For your religion, all of these people have these great miracle claims, and they're the same basis of yours. Like, it couldn't have happened any other way. Joseph Smith couldn't have written the Book of Mormon. He was illiterate, which isn't true. But, that's the claim. People will make claims like this. Why do you accept it for Roman Catholicism with the same foundational structure, but not for other religions? Why are you a Catholic instead of a Mormon?
Okay, of the little I know of Joseph Smith,
Go more existential. I'm not asking you to debunk Mormonism. I've already done that for myself.
no. I'm just saying. I'm just using it as a comparison.
Right.
Joseph Smith, the claims that he made couldn't be verified at all. There are no tangible signs of him saying that God the Father appeared to him or the angel Moroni appeared to him. There's no evidence presented or given.
Right. Just like those demons. Wait. Joseph Smith gives testimony of the demons. He has witnesses, of gods. He has witnesses to other miracles he does. There's the 3 witnesses and the 8 witnesses who supposedly see the golden plates, who see these miracles. He and Oliver Cowdery go into a temple and meet a spiritual Moses and are given I think, Aaronic priesthood at that point. Aaronic, not ironic. Not ironic. The Aaronic priesthood.
The priesthood of Aaron.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So there are witnesses to many of them, but you're talking about the core claim. And you know what? There's just as much evidence that anybody saw these magical figures as the demons you believed have been exorcised. So we are talking about spiritual claims that can't be demonstrated. They are the quality for quality. They're roughly the same. Now, I agree with you. Joseph Smith's story is so modern, it's obvious he's a liar because you can just point to so much. There's so much stupid stuff in it. But as far as the claim itself goes, we're talking about you accept this claim with a ton of lack of evidence, but you don't accept it from other religions.
Yeah, I mean, other religions, I'll use another example of a different miracle. There's Our Lady of Guadalupe in Mexico City, which is an image on a cloth.
Yeah.
The claim is it's still there in Mexico City in the cathedral. It's been studied. it's been put under microscopes and infrared photography, and the conclusions that came from that are that it's not a natural phenomenon, that it's not a painting or a picture, and that the actual image itself points to the Catholic faith. There's
no, I'm sorry, but
what
Tom.
What
the
about
Catholic,
the lady in
the Catholic?
I'm sorry. What about the one with the Virgin Mary on the piece of cheese toast? When the lady made the grilled cheese sandwich and the Virgin Mary was on there, do you take that one too?
Like, so before we hop to another one, I want to engage Tom on the one he just presented. Tom, Catholics see Catholic imagery. Mormons see Mormon imagery. They have seen angel Moroni's and all kinds of stuff in all sorts of places. They don't necessarily call them miracles, but they call fucking Muslims see proof of jinns and proof of they see Muslim-related images. Hindus see Hindu-related images. It's also just like near-death experiences. Even if you aren't a Christian, if you're raised in a Christian society, you're likely to have a Christian near-death experience where in a dream you think, whereas over in the Middle East, whether you're a Muslim or not, you have these Muslim near-death experiences. You're literally talking about something that you said is a natural phenomenon. A pattern has arrived. There's actually a word for it. Can't remember what it is. You might. What's the phrase for the tendency for humans to see faces and things? That's
apophenia and pareidolia.
Pareidolia. Catholics recognize Catholic images or things that look like Catholic images, and over how big the world is and how many people there are and how many places, how many stains there are, the odds of a stain which resembles an image, like, my guy, that's not that impressive. I'm no more impressed than the people who literally take pictures of smoke coming out of the Twin Towers and draw the outline of the devil complete with a pitchfork and tail on it, because that shapes fucking my guy. I'm sorry, I don't need to swear at you. I'm not mad or riled up. I know people don't love this story, but my guy, some clouds look like bunnies, especially to people who know what bunnies are. And I agree, this is a rarer stain. To quote the guy who played the Catholic priest in Always Sunny in Philadelphia, well, I think it's a stain, but it's an interesting stain. I'll give you that. Why is it more likely that God put a stain on a cloth than this stain through all of the stains in the world, all the millions and trillions of stains there's ever been? This stain must have been God, instead of eventually you're going to get a stain that looks like the thing you're looking at for and the imagery that you're familiar with.
But I think that it's not a stain. It's an actual image of a woman dressed as an Aztec queen. So the Aztec would look at that and understand that she's part of them, yet she prays to this vast Catholic God. And there's a petal on her which tells them that the God that she's praying to is in her womb, which confirms Catholicism. So it's not a stain. It's actually, you can actually visibly see it, and you can draw those conclusions from the image. It's not the same as looking at
I'm saying you're talking about the Aztec pictograph. That is clearly not. Sure, you're saying that people have said that it was a naturally occurring thing. It's clearly not. It's just one of the things where it's literally like the psychiatrist, whichever invested parties they got into it, and I'm certain, just looking at the one you gave as an example, I'm certain there's probably already been debunks of this thing. It's very clearly not a naturally occurring, you're right, this isn't a stain, but the stains do show up. This isn't even the grilled cheese like Forrest was talking about.
Well, that's what's getting me, is that, like, Jimmy's talked about all these other religions that have, miracles. I'm talking about the miracles of your religion that are also silly. And what kills me is, a minute ago, of like, who knows how long ago, Jimmy asked, what miracles do you believe in, all these miracles? And you were like, which miracles specifically are you talking about? As if he needed to make a distinction. Either it's a miracle or it's not. And like, I'm sitting here looking at, I pulled up Kevin of Saint Kevin of Glendalough, who was born in 498. He lived, this is venerated by the Catholic Church. This dude apparently lived for 120 years, and at one point in his life held out his hand, and a blackbird landed in his hand and began to build a nest, and he stayed there with his hand outstretched until it nested, laid eggs, and the eggs hatched, and new birds were produced. He just stood there with his hand out for months while all that happened. The miracle of St. Kevin. Is that something you take seriously? Is it any more serious than, 3 children in Portugal lied about seeing a ghost of a woman above a bush? Is it any more serious than in Guadalupe, some people thought that they saw Mary? Is it any more serious than the woman grilled cheese and said that it looked like the Virgin Mary? Is it any more serious than the lady who found she was eating goldfish crackers and one of the goldfish had a little cross-shaped burn mark on it, and that was like the Jesus cross on the fish, and so it was a whole thing? Is it any more serious? And the person on Penn and Teller's bullshit about this, when they showed the guy who said that there were eyes that appeared in the wood grain of his closet door, and that was the eyes of God. Like, pick any random thing of anybody saying any random thing is a miracle, or the aliens, the same kind of evidence for people being abducted by aliens. You're picking ones that you like, that make sense to you, not thinking about them too hard, and saying that it's justification for the rest of your beliefs. And I'm over here just wondering, not only why is that good enough for you, but why is that good enough for your God? If your God is real and he's like, yo, 9/11's gonna happen, I could stop that. But instead, I'm gonna manifest as a stain, and some people will argue about it. And I just don't get how this is the serious conversation that you called us to have about, like, there's miracles in the world, verifiable miracles that people can all agree are supernatural, magic, crazy, proves God. There's this stain one time, y'all. And, like, give me something serious. If God could help me find my keys in the morning, maybe I'd take it a little bit more seriously. But instead, you've got a stain in a grilled cheese sandwich, and fucking thousands of people starve to death every day, and the stain and the grilled cheese sandwich aren't happening. They're not helping. I don't get it, dude.
So what's
I'm just sitting over here
I found a couple of things. So
30 minutes.
I found a couple of things so far, which may even make this worse. So I'm just going to show you, Tom, what the difference between, like, how a religious person seems to investigate versus a skeptic. Tom, what did you say the miracle actually was for Our Lady of Guadalupe? What was the miraculous thing?
It's an image on a cloth, and it's not produced by any natural means.
Right. So that's not actually the miracle,
cloth.
Except for that's not the actual. So the story about where the thing came from was that. But the thing that they say scientifically can't be explained is how long it has been preserved. And by the way, it took very little searching to find out there's actually been several scientists who have already challenged it. So at best, they can say lots of scientists ignore it, and nope, there's not any significant serious work being done. But the actual miracle is supposed to be the preservation. Now, there is a second claim that it just appeared on the robe of, I'm trying to see, I forgot what the guy's name was, but the robe of some guy who lived in 1500. There is zero reason to believe that, because that's just an anecdote. Why would, okay, how, Tom, here's why. How many examples ever of miraculous paintings, portraits, non-naturally occurring? Because again, it actually is not claimed that this was like, the threads rearranged themselves or whatever. It sounds like they think there's a magic painter, maybe an elf, I don't know what it is, but there's no claim that it's naturally occurring. The claim is that it supernaturally occurred. Mm-hmm. So
that's right.
How many examples of a supernaturally occurring painting have ever been confirmed?
I've never heard of that except that one.
Right. No. Not even that once. You said except that once. That's never been confirmed either. I'm not asking how many claims have ever been made. I'm asking how many have ever been confirmed. This one's never been confirmed. But you know how many miracles of this type where it turns out the answer was somebody lied? And we're talking about during periods of time where people may have wanted to grow favor with the people they want control over, prove that they are God's select person. Hey, here's my miraculous. Again, I can point to similar Mormon examples. This stuff isn't. So we've got lots and lots, as a skeptic, and I'm looking through candidate explanations, magically appearing paintings have never been proven to even be possible. So I don't put them in my list of candidate explanations.
But then the question I would ask is, what would be the alternative explanation as to how it's there?
They lied. That the guy who had it on the robe, here's just a candidate explanation. I don't know that this is true. But again, this is demonstrated to be possible. The person wanted to prove that God favors them, had the robe commissioned by somebody else that was willing to lie, or maybe he himself is a great painter, creates it, and then claims it. Again, you don't have any hard evidence. Even if you came to me and said, there was 6 people who saw it happen. Well, 8 people saw the golden plates that Joseph Smith was translating. So why are you not a Mormon? Like, it's coming to the same thing. Eyewitness accounts and claims of miracles are not good evidence. You need the level above.
Yeah, I mean, as I said at the beginning, it was scientifically studied, and the natural explanation was eliminated.
No,
It's not the same.
No, I'm sorry.
No?
Your barrier of it was scientifically studied. Again, I already looked it up. There are multiple scientists who challenge it and outright say, first of all, the thing you originally said that it was naturally occurring, that has been eliminated. There are scientists who say clearly a person made this. The thing that was supposed to be the miracle was that it somehow was preserved for so long, not the actual occurrence, though again, yes, there is the account from the guy that it just showed up. That's a separate miracle that I don't understand why you even accept that one, because again, you're just trusting some dude from 500 years ago.
I want to throw out also, like, I know this is the same thing that you're saying, Jimmy, but like, you're talking about things that happened, hundreds of years ago. Satya Sai Baba lived in India from 1926. He died in 2011 at the age of 84, and he was worshipped by millions of people, saying that he performed miracles such as the manifestation of small objects like rings and necklaces and watches. He was able to perform healings. He supposedly resurrected the dead. He was capable of clairvoyance. He was capable of being in 2 places at once. Many of his supporters claim that he was omnipotent and omniscient. And he died in 2011. Millions of people worshiped this guy and saw him and went and visited him on a daily, maybe weekly basis. This guy lived in our time, and millions of people believed and still believe in his miraculous abilities. Do you believe in it? Do you think that it really happened?
I would have to look at the evidence.
Well, finally.
But there we are.
But
why not say, Tom, well, do you have any other explanation for that? They say that he raised the dead. Do you know of anybody else who can do that? Any other explanation for that? Why not give us the exact same lines you've given us for the painting that miraculously happened, or the stain that miraculously happened, or any other stuff?
Go ahead, Sir Tom.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, from my understanding, right, that and this is where we get in differences of what scientists agree or disagree. But the scientists that have studied it said that it isn't a painting or a picture.
Yeah.
Do you have any?
Again, this is what religious people do. So I don't even blame you. I was able to Google and immediately find so many examples of scientists disagreeing. Also, why do you reject the investigation that happened in 1556, which not only determined that it was painted, but even knew which painter did it because it matched his style? That the painting was done by Marco Cipoc de Aquino.
Right. The problem with that is that the modern technology that we have to study it contradicts that thesis.
How? How does it contradict it? What is the specific information that contradicts it?
Because if it's put under infrared photography and under microscopes, and it's demonstrated that it's not a painting or a picture, that would contradict that statement.
Okay, so what's funny is, Tom, you're not saying that it isn't exactly the guy's style, and that the reason you would look at that and go, hey, just the same way I can recognize certain painters without seeing their signature. Your conspiracy is it's not a painting because of some selective scientific studies that I think have happened, ignoring the ones otherwise that have said, no, this is clearly a painting. But also that at the same time that this was happening, the specific supernatural entity was not only doing paintings on cloth supernaturally, spontaneously, but was also ripping off some other painter's style like AI is doing to everybody today. Do you understand why, to an actual person who's a skeptic who goes, okay, let's think about what the candidate explanations are. Not only does this sound like weak evidence, it's kind of laughable. But I'm trying to not disrespect you and just laugh in your face. But the idea that you would go, it is more likely that this big magical thing without documentation, that years later, a couple of, well, one idiot and one really smart guy would be able to poke holes in on a show because technology has come so far that our basic understanding of things has advanced. And clearly, it is way more likely that somebody lied about where they got their painted cloak. And again, like your assertions of it would be the biggest news in the world if they had actually determined that this was a naturally occurring painting.
That's what the Catholic Church claims.
Right. I know the Catholic Church claims it,
Yeah,
but the Catholic Church,
and that's the
point.
only reason you believe it.
Right. You're not a Mormon, but Mormons claim much more miraculous things, including raising some people from the dead with lots and lots
Satya
of
Sai
witnesses
Baba
there.
did it. Satya Sai Baba did it. He raised people from the dead and millions of people saw it. And they say they saw it and they agree with it.
Were you born a Catholic?
Yes.
I knew that answer before I asked, but it's, again, I'm not saying that to try and degrade your experience. It's just, I was born a Mormon, and until I learned to actually be a skeptic, I took all of their stupid miracles at face value and went, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I was raised pagan. The same things you're telling me now are the same reasons I used to believe in magic until I started applying the same rules of logic that I do to everything else forever that I did to that. And what you just did, I brought up this dude who millions of people say did all these crazy miracles a decade ago, and you're like, well, I'd have to see some evidence for that. And meanwhile, 3 children in Portugal said they saw a floating woman above a bush, and you're like, yeah, for sure. There's no way they would lie about that. That's crazy. That's got to be real.
I do love, as far as all the claims of science can't explain, when you look for those, it's all Catholic resource centers and personal bloggers. Like literally, here's the title of a WordPress, of a WordPress. Where did it go? I just had it a second. Where they actually said, specifically, NASA scientists couldn't explain it. Show me when the NASA scientists were. First of all, NASA. I'm meant to believe that NASA was summoned to Mexico to investigate with all of the technology and expertise of NASA whether or not a painting was a naturally occurring or miracle. Like just the level of copium with the way in which these people are trying to present it, it reeks of scams. Like not just Catholicism. It literally just, when you're just studying the way cults form and charismatic people convert people and shit, and it's literally just like, why is it always a stain from a few hundred, or not a stain, a painting from a few hundred years ago that NASA scientists can't explain? Why is it shit like that and never like, hey, here's the video of this app? As soon as cameras were invented, that supernatural AI painter just stopped doing any work.
So the question I guess I'd have is, does it come down to different scientific viewpoints and contradict each other, and is that becomes a problem?
No, frankly, if everything you said was true, except we've already shown you that several of the things you said, you didn't fully understand the claims of this miracle. But let's say the core thing you said was correct, that science cannot explain it. I would actually, I wouldn't even be able to do that. I would just say science has not explained it. Let's say we actually sent NASA for some reason to Mexico to the painting on the cloth to confirm the miracle. And NASA came and said, I got nothing, and we threw everything at this.
When you say they couldn't find an explanation for its existence, or what are we talking?
Whatever. If NASA threw their hands up and said, we got not how it appeared, this I don't think it looks like a painting on a cloth. I don't know how it showed up. I don't know how it preserved 500 years. This thing's made of cottage cheese. It should have decayed in a week, not 500 years. If they came back and said all of that, a skeptic would still say, you know, the thing we haven't proven is that a ghost did it, that a god did it, that magic happened, that a miracle happened. A gap in our understanding does not necessitate a god. God gets to be the explanation when you prove God did it, not when you run out of every other explanation that you're currently capable of providing. It's the same reason I don't believe the pyramids were built by aliens. But guess what? Aliens don't violate the physical properties of the universe. So as a candidate explanation, even that's more likely, and that the aliens accidentally laser beamed an image of Mary as they were leaving the world onto a cloth in 1500 whatever is a more candidate explanation, because it doesn't violate the natural order in any way, than magic did it. But I'm not saying I believe it was the aliens, for the record, Tom.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
I am.
We're gonna have to speed through our final callers here. So let's let you have your some final thoughts here.
No. I mean, I just, to me, it unless there isn't a scientific consensus, then that's another issue. But if there is scientific evidence out there that it's not a painting or a picture, the only other explanation is a supernatural.
No, it is. No, absolutely not.
No, it isn't, dude. That's the last possible thing.
Until science can prove that they can explain all natural occurring things, no matter what you just said is not true. Supernatural has never been demonstrated to be a plausible or any candidate explanation. Science cannot currently explain all of it. And in fact, naturally occurring in a somehow completely unlikely way, getting a painting that detailed through fucking magic paint in the not magic but paint in the wind is still more likely, because it doesn't have to violate. It sounds outrageously unlikely, but outrageously unlikely is still more likely than things which have never been demonstrated to be possible. But science cannot explain all things. I don't think this is that hard to explain. I think if they actually got NASA with all the NASA resources, they would be like, here's the type of paint they use and all that stuff. Again, there are already scientists who have gone and done their little independent studies, but no large formal organization has done anything. And I've literally looked already, there are 0 peer-reviewed anythings on it. So when you say science failed here, that wouldn't be the case. We would have some sort of study, some sort of experiment with peer review if that was the case. Individual scientists going, boy, this blows my mind, is not scientific representation.
Right. So you're skeptical of the people that did the particular study.
No, not necessarily. When you say they did infrared photography, I assume that they got a qualified infrared interpreter. But if he goes and says, I don't see anything on here, 1, is he capable of missing something? Yes. 2, is it possible that it needed to be done differently? Yes. Or 3, is the evidence not infrared a possibility that you're not going to find whatever the evidence is? Yeah, like there's so many elements to it, Tom. Forrest, go ahead and give your last thoughts. We really do got to move on. We only have
I think if the National Artistic and Sketching Association said that it's a magic, then it's clearly magic, and that's fine. I'm convinced.
Harry, it was Harry.
We'll leave it at that. So thanks, guys.
I think Forrest needs you to know he was being sarcastic. I don't know if that matters.
I was being extremely sarcastic.
All right, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah,
it's okay.
I'm sure we'll talk again, Tom. We'll see you.
All right. So thanks very much.
Bye-bye. Yeah, Tom is a very nice guy, and he's not. Nice. It's fine, but so I don't want to be I don't want to be a dick to him. It's just so unbelievably frustrating to sit here for 45 minutes while somebody says, like, you can't explain this, therefore it's a guy, it's magic. And we're like, okay, there's a lot of explanations for that. And he's like, yeah, but there hasn't been, no scientist has proved it wasn't magic. And we're like, that's not how that works. He's like, yeah, but what about this other magic? And we're like, okay, what about all these other things that people say are magic? Yeah, but those are clearly ridiculous. These are the magic things that really make sense because my church says they make sense. And the whole time I'm over here like, what about your church in St. Kevin or the magic milk or the other whatever else? You don't think about those. This is a painting that just became a painting through natural processes, and nobody says it didn't happen. And it's like, who gives a shit? That's not how thinking works. Yeah. And every single time we would give a counterexample, he would demonstrate basic logic and then deliberately not use that same logic with the next thing that he said. And it's deeply frustrating. For 45 minutes, it's just deeply frustrating.
Epistemologically, my full conclusion of that video, of that entire conversation is, epistemologically, there is zero additional reason to accept any of that as there is to accept Mormonism.
Hello, I'm Jimmy Snow, executive producer for The Line and avid candy eater. Hey, if you'd like to support this channel, you can do so now on Patreon or as a channel member with tiers specific to supporting specific shows and hosts. And it also supports our ability to expand programming going forward. You could also leave a super thanks down below, get a little special highlighted comment, and I'll tell you what, you could hit like and you could hit subscribe. Now, here are some video suggestions so we can fudge that algorithm. Go with one of ours. Forget everyone else on YouTube. I'm begging.